Alright, good morning, good night, good afternoon, wherever you're from. Today I wanted to talk about a more generalized topic than I did yesterday. Yesterday I talked about the election. Today I want to just go over the two-party system. I don't want to go over any specific country, how it is in any specific country. I just want to talk about pros and cons of it, and what it is, what I think of it. So let's get right into it. What a two-party system is, it's basically when two political parties dominate the politics in the country. I said control here, but I don't want to say completely control, because in a two-party system there's usually way more than just two parties, but those two parties dominate the political landscape. Again, that there is still more parties. It's called a two-party system because those two parties get the most attention from the public. In the USA, as many are aware, we have a two-party system, but the two parties used, again, a lot are aware, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. Of course, like I said, we're not the only country to use this two-party system. Some other examples are the Bahamas, which have the Liberal and Free National Movement parties, the UK, which have the Labour and Conservative parties, and France, which have Socialists and Republicans. Again, these aren't the only countries, like I said here. They're just some examples that I decided to pick out. So let's get into the pros of the two-party system. First of all, it's easier to pick a side. You can just look. This is because you can just look at the party. You can see their ideas of that party, and then the candidate that is leading that party, they're probably gonna have at least mostly the same ideas. So you should still look at the candidate, but it does make it a lot easier because, like I said, you can just look at that party, look at what it usually represents, and your candidate that is representing that party is probably going to represent those ideas. So yeah, it just makes it a lot easier to pick who you want to vote for. And then secondly, you get to vote for the representative of your party. So basically, in the United States at least, you get to choose for a presidential election at least, who is going to represent the Republican or Democratic Party. So this still does give you freedom about who's going to run. You get to fill out a ballot on who's going to represent your party. So you still get to pick. It's still kind of independent, you could say, do that, because you still get to pick who runs. It's not the parties who are controlling who is running. And like I said before, this pretty much goes hand in hand with the first one. You get to know about your candidate just through the party. Again, you can look through what that party is representing. Again, your party is probably gonna, or your candidate is probably gonna represent that. And then this is mainly for a one-party system, but a two-party system makes it a lot harder for a governor to become tyrannical. It still could become tyrannical, but it makes it a lot harder. And some proof of this is the USSR, which had a one-party state, which was a communist party state that was undeniably one of the most tyrannical governments in the world. Some other examples, we could say China, again, communist, very not as tyrannical as the USSR, you could say, but again, still suppresses a lot of basic human rights. And then finally, it's easier to grant things. Democrats and Republicans, they don't agree on a lot, but let's say you had 5 or maybe even 10. 10's a little bit unrealistic. Let's say you just had 5 different political parties in the Senate or the House. It'd be a lot easier for all those parties with all differentiating ideas. They could agree on stuff. It'd just take a lot longer for them to to come to an agreement, rather than in a two-party system. Again, those two parties might disagree on a lot, but they can come to an agreement way faster than like 5 or more parties. Next, before I get into the next one, this is the election of 1796. It was Jefferson, a Democrat Republican, against Adams, a Federalist. This is, I believe, the first example that I could find of a two-party system beginning in the United States. I do want to talk about Jefferson's opinion on the two-party system later, what he said after this next slideshow. Now I want to talk about the cons of the two-party system. This is more in favor of multi-party state. So first of all, it limits the choice of voters. So what I mean by this, there's only two candidates. Again, you get to pick those two candidates, but there's only really two candidates that you actually get to pick from. Uh, I mean, again, you could. This just makes it so there's less choices. Obviously, like I said. Next, I want to get into, or not get into, but these two parties can't express every idea. Again, the Democrat and Republican Party, they're very big, so they have a lot of ideas that they can express as a result of being two huge parties. But it's just compared to like having again five or more parties, they can't express every idea. At least they can't express those ideas in as much detail as like five different parties could. Again, they can express a lot of ideas, just not as much. Now, this is very rare. Don't think there's any examples of this happening, but both dominating parties could become tyrannical. Um, I don't think there's any examples, like I said, but basically, if this did happen, it'd just be a loser situation. Because I mean, there's two horrible candidates that you would have to choose from, and it might as well be a one-party state or like a tyrannical one-party state at that point. Uh, and this kind of goes hand in hand with the first one, you could say, but smaller candidates have a low chance of winning. This does not mean that they are bad. It just means they don't get as much attention because obviously, in the United States at least, the Democrats and Republicans, they get all the attention mostly. And you might hear something about an independent candidate, but we can see in this election all the independent parties or smaller parties that weren't Democrat or Republican, they got way less votes. Not any of them got a million. They all, most of them got around like 500,000, half a million, but none even broke a million. Of course, none got any electoral votes. Lastly, a bad candidate could be picked to lead a party. An example of this we could say was in when Herbert Hoover ran for president and he won. I don't know who he's running against, but in Herbert Hoover, he was a great person, but there's no doubt that he was a bad candidate, and and the other person that he was running against, he could have been better. I guess we don't know because he didn't become president, but he could have been a lot better, but we wouldn't know now because he didn't have a chance of running until at least 4 years, most likely 8 if Herbert Hoover would get. I don't know if he did. I don't believe he did. But let's say Herbert Hoover did get picked for running for a second term again. If he didn't drop out, then that second candidate has to wait 8 years until they do have a chance of running. Now, I do want to talk about what the founding fathers thought, Jefferson and Washington specifically, thought of a two-party system. In Washington's farewell address when he was stepping down as president, you could say he didn't leave his presidency early like Nixon, you could say, but he did not run for a third term, which you were allowed to do as president at the time. In his farewell address, though, he said, and you could say he actually predicted that political parties would divide this country. I 100% agree with this statement. We can see, especially recently with the election that just happened, Republicans and Democrats, despite being in the same country, they tend to act like they're two different like ethnicities, you could say, or two people from two different countries. They act, or let me elaborate on that. Like Washington says, it caused division. It does cause division among. Like half the population is divided as a result. Now I do want to talk about what Jefferson said about this. Not said about this, but I guess you could say thought. He agreed with Washington, but as we saw in the election of 1796, Jefferson, honestly, he was kind of forced to found his new party, the Democrat Republicans, because if he didn't, they'd both be running under Federalists, and they were two differentiating candidates with two different ideas. So if they're both under Federalists, this could confuse a lot of people, and it pretty much should just be a lie because they both were not Federalists, which of course you can see as Jefferson did not say he was a Federalist; he was a Democrat Republican. Now I just want to talk about what do I think, and honestly, all these systems, specifically the multi-party system and the two-party system, they all have their pros and cons. they all can be good. They all can be bad, or they both can be good. And both can be bad for, of course, different reasons. The only thing I do want to say is a one-party system. It just will not work out. It the every example I can think of one-party system, they're tyrannical. In Nazi Germany, for example, under Hitler, fascism was the main party. If you say that's not tyrannical, you're either a fascist, which isn't a good thing, or you're just uneducated. We can also see in the USSR, very tyrannical. Communist China, very tyrannical. Vietnam has a one-party system, I believe. They're not as tyrannical, but I don't think the Vietnamese party or government is necessarily as good as having more than one party. Um, Lastly, I just want to say too, you should still overview all candidates no matter the system, as again mainly multi-party or two-party system. Uh, like I said, this is more towards a two-party system. In a two-party system, there's still more than two, like I said before, more than two candidates actually running, but it's just those other candidates do not get like get close to no attention, and that again, that does not mean they're bad candidates. So you should still definitely look over these candidates, see if their ideas are like yours, and if they are, vote for them. And honestly, I don't think uh, anything like this would happen. I don't think we would move away from the two-party system, which is pretty much what this last statement is saying. Uh, Even though a lot of people agree with it, I just don't see the government shifting away from that. That doesn't mean you can't vote for the other candidates. It's just unlikely for them to win. Doesn't mean you still shouldn't vote for them because they won't win. You should still show them your support. You know, I just want to give an example of it that the multi-party system does work. Again, the two-party system is fine, but we can see in New Zealand. New Zealand has adopted a multi-party system. I believe they have five. I could be wrong. I believe they have five political parties, uh, and they are one of the most democratic countries either. They're a very successful democracy. You don't hear anything ever bad coming out of New Zealand. It's clearly working there. Like I said before, though, a one-party system, I can't think of any good examples of that. So, I mean, this is all I really wanted to talk about today. I just wanted to talk about pros and cons. I wanted to just get a couple people thinking about what they support. So,